Hey everybody, I'm Jack Reeder with Future Pastimes. I'm a designer on Dune-themed games and expansions, among other things. In this video, I want to talk about the Ecaz and Moritani expansion, which was expansion 3 for the classic Dune board game 2019, a year later. So it came out roughly around this time last year. We did a preview of it at last year's Gen Con. It wasn't actually in stores yet, so we're a little bit early for a year out, but it's basically been a year. And what do I think of it after a year? What has been the feedback that I've gotten from other players and the general consensus? Now, one of the things that I did at this year's Gen Con 2024, I was there doing mostly demos for the Adventures of Conan, but I did demo Dune, and I did talk to a lot of Dune players, and they had all 3 expansions there, and a number of players were looking to pick up an expansion and were asking me, what do I think is the best expansion? And I said, you know what? I think that pound for pound, I think that expansion 3 is probably the best expansion. It is going to depend on what you want to get out of it, but each expansion adds 2 factions, and each expansion adds 1 or more other variants as well. So the first expansion added the tech tokens, but it also added new treachery cards, a new spice card with the sand trout, the cheap hero trader. So there's a lot in there, and a lot of players, that's the sort of stuff that they're looking for. The new factions, I think, are generally well received. But what I would say, the reason I think that Ecaz and Moritani is now probably the best expansion is that you have the 2 factions that I think add some really interesting new elements to the game. They're both fun to play. They're both interesting to have in play, even if you're not playing with them. But then it's the 3 variants that are in there that I think add a lot of value. So you're getting a lot of bang for your buck because it's the same price pretty much. I mean, it certainly was at Gen Con as the other expansion. So 2 of these variants are I think, things that you could include every time you play because they're really easy to involve in the game. They don't require a lot of extra mentat brain processing power for you to understand, and even new players can get them, and that would be the Nexus cards and the Discovery tokens. They're both really low impact, but in terms of difficulty and complexity, but they add a lot to the gameplay, I think, and a lot of people have given me that feedback. The homeworlds is definitely more complex, but for the players who are ready for it, it adds a really interesting new mix to the game. But certainly weigh in on the comments here to this video if you've had a chance to try out expansion 3, especially if you've had a chance to try out all 3. Which do you think is the best expansion? And feel free to expound on why that is. It's always been my goal as a designer to make sure that each successive expansion feels like it was worth it. I don't want it to feel like, oh, they're definitely running out of ideas and this is the scraping the bottom of the barrel. I very much wanted to move against that perception. So that's why I put a lot of effort into expansion 3 and a lot of play testing and a lot of really getting a feedback from the play testers, as wide of a pool as we can assemble to really get the most out of it. And so I feel like we definitely hit it, and I'm so thrilled with what Gale Force 9 allowed me to pack into this box. It does have a lot. It's got more token sheets because of those homeworlds, but they add such a great aesthetic to the board. So I used the homeworld tokens, the planets themselves, for storing reserves, even if we're not using that variant. And I would say I probably use the homeworld variant about 25, maybe 30% of the time. So it's definitely not as often, but I use the Discovery tokens about 80% of the time and Nexus cards 100%. I always include them, even when I'm teaching it to new people, even when we're just playing basic, we're using those Nexus cards. And so I'm happy with how they turned out. There's a couple of people wish that the effects were more powerful. We're thinking about maybe just having a variant where you just get to keep using it, but that kind of swings the pendulum pretty far in the other direction. So I think having them as a one-shot effect, the fact that they're secret, I think, is what makes that a little more impactful. So normally, if you're in an alliance with the Bene Gesserit, everybody knows that you have access to the voice. But when you have the Bene Gesserit Nexus card, when they're not in the game, nobody knows that you're going to have the voice for one particular battle, and that could be the difference it takes for you to make sure that you win solo. And that's really what it was about. Certainly, some of those Nexus cards have much stronger effects than others, and that's just the nature of how the factions work. In most cases, they are whatever that alliance ability is. Some slight deviations where it doesn't really make sense in the context of the game, but overall, I enjoy them, and the discovery tokens as well. I think if we have an opportunity to add in a few extras in the Kwisatz Haderach Game Found campaign, we'll probably try to include a few additional discovery tokens. There are some homebrew ones that are out there, some of which I like quite a bit, some of which I'm not super keen on, but I think there's some good ideas in there, and maybe a couple more iterations in the lab will help to bump those up. But it's the sort of thing where, yeah, you can have a whole bunch of them. You're never going to see all of them. The way that we've worked it is you're only ever going to see 3 of a particular type. So right now there's 4 high-regs, 4 smuggler tokens, and at most you'll see 3 of each if you get all of those discovery spice cards come up in the game. And we do sometimes stack the deck. We split that spice deck in half, shuffle all of the discovery spice cards into one half, and that goes on top of the deck so that we know we're going to get those relatively early in the game, first few rounds most likely, and it adds some intrigue. We don't know which ones are going to show up and where they're going to be. Got to go discover them, and then you'll find out later on, like, oh, this was a game where we did not have the extra stronghold, although it usually does manage to show up, or there was no ornithopter this time, or no free treachery card, or whatever the case may be. So having additional types in there, not really types, but more higher eggs, more smuggler tokens, maybe a new type, that might be interesting as well. There were some things that came on in the last Dune book, Princess of Dune, that was published earlier, I think it was this year, maybe it was late last year. Time is a flat circle. So that make really interesting discovery tokens. So that's the thing, is as long as they keep cranking out more Dune stories, and there's no reason to think they're ever going to stop, there's opportunity for more things that are easily folded into a game of Dune. And yeah, I think that for me, playing with both Ecaz and Moritani, I just enjoy it. I like those factions a lot. I'm drawn more to the Moritani, just because I seem to gravitate towards the bad guys. It was always the Harkonnen, and then it was always the Tleilaxu, and now I sort of shift between those 3 factions the most, but every once in a while I do like to play Ecaz, and I think that they have got some real strengths to them as a faction. They're fun to play. I like having those ambassador tokens in there, and I think Occupy can be a very strong advantage in the game. So those are my thoughts. Just wanted to, pump it up some more. Sales for Ecaz and Moritani have done pretty well. But there's definitely people who are like, oh, do I really need a 3rd expansion? And of course, my answer to that is yes, because this is a great expansion. It's got a lot of good stuff that you're going to want to add into your Dune game, even if it's just portions of it. But yeah, so much value in that box. It's a really, Gale Force 9 has done an incredible job of making Dune affordable and accessible, in my opinion. So I think that base game, published by somebody else, probably would cost at least $10 more than it does, but so reasonable. We'll see. We'll see what the Kwisatz Haderach edition is like, and what will be the default edition afterwards. Will it be new? Will it still be the same? Will it be a one-shot? No idea. No idea. So let me know your thoughts on that as well. That's it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.